Welcome to Double Grit. I'm Grillsy, this is Tom, and tonight we're talking about character creation.
Yes, we are. Well, let's get right into it. So, I think we touched last week on having a session 0 and explaining what that meant. So, the next obvious point to jump to, by the way, is character creation. So from session 0, obviously would have had the discussion about your world, so you should know roughly what you're working with. And ideally, at this point, we'll be discussing the specifics of the actual system. Although we're going to try and stay as system agnostic as we can, as we've said in the past.
Yeah, maybe touch on a couple of general examples, but I suppose really we're here to look at those sort of broader themes and sort of stuff that transcends system.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, so the different stats, there's different ways to do stats, some kind of character concept stuff. There'll be more than that, obviously, but yeah. Let's jump right into the start. Then let's jump into stats.
So starting with stats, I suppose the big choice that sort of presents itself both to the GM and the party to make the call on is, well, do we go random, or are we looking for something more bespoke?
Yeah.
Or is it some mix in between, depending on system? So you can have the chaos of a fully rolled stat line and character. Maybe you just limit that random element to stats, or some sort of point buy or set array system. So there's pros and cons to all of those. Like arrays that jump off the head, the one that jumps to me, and for a long time we tended to use arrays.
I think both. That's probably the one that I've used the most, really, outside of, because when we've played Pathfinder or Dungeons like D&D or anything like that, we've always used an array.
Yeah.
I think. So let's start with arrays then. Let's talk about arrays. Like, what are the pros and cons of arrays, I guess?
Well, I suppose the biggest pro is you get a reasonably even building point for all of the players. You're not running the risk of somebody rolling up some random just godly stats, or someone being just sort of basically mediocre, and getting that sort of dichotomy within a party. I mean, there's still a lot more that goes into the character than just the stats, but I suppose that's sort of the biggest thing. And so the biggest pro there is definitely getting that sort of solid, even playing field for everyone.
Yeah, and not only that, it sort of helps you set the power level then. So the power level is consistent. Everyone's the same power. What have I done? Just ruined my camera.
And all good.
Yep.
Yeah, it also helps set the theme. So it's not just a matter of setting the power level for the party in terms of keeping them all in line with each other. It helps you evoke a certain specific feel in a campaign.
That's right. We've always gone with like a semi-heroic stat line. So you've got the party. The stats are higher. That makes the party more powerful. Obviously, it makes them feel more powerful. Makes them feel a little bit more heroic. But then you can always go the other way. You can bring the stats that array down a little bit, and then it's a
like run the
low
scenario,
fantasy.
or even using D&D as an example. You throw the standard NPC stat line at them. Like, that's even an option if you're looking for that lower sort of rags to riches campaign.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's a lot. Your stats are sort of simultaneously a lot more tied into things, and a lot more not as well these days. There's a bit of a dichotomy there. It's there's a lot of things that used to be stat driven that just sort of get hand waved away now, but a lot of things that used to not be.
I think a lot of the games nowadays are sort of moving away from that old school sort of mechanic driven game and more into like a story driven sort of game. It seems to be the preference too. Like, you look at games that were very popular sort of, 10, 20 years ago, you had D&D was pretty much the main game on the market, and then like Palladium, and they were very crunchy.
Yeah.
And then you come to like sort of now, and it's things like, Pathfinder still, but Pathfinder's not a really good example of not being crunchy. But you look at
it was a big change when it came out, though.
That's right, and like things like Burning Wheel, that was very popular for a while. Dungeon World was very popular for a while. Apocalypse World is still fairly popular, and they're very story driven.
And even then, like, taking off from the crunch side of things too, you're looking at things like the Genesis system, and its sort of precursors in from. I just mind blanked on the company, Fantasy Flight. That's what I'm looking for. Big change there of sort of away from those sort of addition of numbers and things, and more sort of you've got a general result feel. But to sort of take it back, that impacts how that sort of system does impact on how well an array might impact it.
That's right.
If it's one of those more free-flowing story-driven systems, all of a sudden setting the arrays less important in terms of things, but it could be good from. It's sort of an argument for the role. You get a bit more character out of a person if you feel a way to describe yourself, if you're getting that difference without that sort of samey sort of feel across.
That's right. Also, with arrays, you have a lot more control over your character than rolling. I mean, if you are a group that likes to roll and place as you go
nuts.
I mean, that's
we
great.
Just did it.
But I love it in some games. But if you did it for sort of a game where your class is heavily dependent on stats, that's going to limit the classes that you're able to go. And depending on the player, that might be fine, but other players, it's going to be a problem.
Particularly if someone comes in, like with a set concept, which we'll sort of touch on a bit later in a bit more detail. But they can have that. That array gives them that sort of option. Similar, and to sort of segue slightly, you sort of get that similar sort of vibe with the point buy. If people have got that idea of this is a character I want, it lets them build to that.
Definitely. It's funny, we're going to talk about my least favourite of all of the stat generating methods. I absolutely detest point buy. I hate it. I don't run with it, and I hate playing it. It has its place, but I'm not a fan.
I suppose the big pro for it is that being able to sort of build to what you want, at least theoretically. I've tended to find that when I've played point buy, I don't think I've ever run point buy, but if I play point buy, that there's never the way that the costs scale. You tend to either get drawn and suck it into, I'm really good at one thing, or I'm just flat and mediocre. Yeah, well, that's my problem with point buy. It always feels like you're better off from a mechanics perspective to over specialize, but I don't like to play that way. No, and it doesn't gel with me at all. And then, I mean, if you do spread your points out, depending on the game and the point buy system, you're either not too far behind, or you fields behind. Yeah, and to a certain extent, depending on the system, you can overcome that with play. But it's an extra layer of work to be aware of if it's a stat generation method you're looking at going with. I think pretty much any of the White Wolf games I've been fine with them being point buy. It's a little more abstract, I suppose, in their system. That's right. It's not as granular. And you don't feel so impacted by not being super specialized in them. Whereas games like the core point buy system for 40k was probably the most recent one I've done. Really felt like I was trying to eke every single possible bonus. But then later in the game, that was really unsatisfying, because when you scrape into that first 40, I guess was the example, it makes hitting the next one harder, so much harder. And you get the same thing in D&D / Pathfinder with people trying to push themselves into their even numbers so they're getting the next modifier up, and then all of a sudden it's, you mean I've got to go twice as far before I get the next one? Yeah. So there is that impact on your stat generation method as well, particularly if you're picking arrays and stuff. Maybe to sort of wind back a bit, something to consider is making sure that it's not just here's a whole bunch of evens. Give it, if you're running say D&D or Pathfinder, giving it something that's got a bit of a mix in there, so they've got the option of going, I'm kind of close here, and then they get that. That's right. Tick up. It's really important in D&D and Pathfinder to have, it sounds dumb, but to have something short term that you can achieve quickly, because characters feel it's very slow. Definitely stat changing. Yeah, definitely. There's been a lot done, particularly with the more recent, and to try and give players sort of something every level that gives them but when you're talking multiple sessions to a level, and that's right, you're hitting at those old dead levels in sort of 3.5, you used to see them now and again, you just go, I leveled and got hit points, and that was about it. Yeah, I don't know, I have a very much love-hate relationship with D&D, depending on who's running, and
precisely the story because of that leveling system. I don't like when you hit those dead levels. It's really, really unsatisfying, especially because they're not the same level for everyone. So someone else across the table is like, oh yeah, cool, I unlocked like 5th level spells. That's fucking awesome. And you're like, yeah, cool, I got 10 hit points.
To touch on it, like the Spirit will a literal successor on from that sort of D&D style. Is like you look at Star Wars Saga Edition, they worked really hard as part of that to be making sure that everyone was getting something besides their increase at every level. Like,
that's right.
And a lot of things went up a little bit, but every time you were going, oh, I got a feat, or I got a talent, or I got some sort of class ability. So it was, every level felt like you got something. It might not have been huge every time, but you had that sort of going on, and you see it. And so, like you were saying, in the 40k / Warhammer Fantasy in general, those D100 games, like because we're talking such granular, at least a sort of 5 hit increases when buying your advances. It'll be interesting to see how it feels in the new version of Warhammer Fantasy, where you buy on a 1 or a 2 at a time.
Yeah.
And how that feels in terms of progression, whether it takes something away from it by you not getting sort of a bump.
Yeah. It's cheap enough at low level where you sort of do get a bump, but I can feel it getting hard at high level. Sort of the higher the stack goes, the harder it gets. But yeah, definitely.
And we're definitely yet to find the sweet spot on that one as to like how much, what's the trade-off between the tributes and skills? Like at what point is it just going to become better to go with a couple of skills rather at low level advanced? But
it's hard to find the trade-off too on experience in that one, but I haven't fully read the rewarding system section yet. It's always the last section I read. I always just get a feel for it anyway through game. And generally I don't read it at all. But this time I'm like finding myself really reaching out for it now, because I'm like 2 sessions in and I still don't really know how much experience to give you guys. Because it's like one person could spend like 5 experience and get quite a big gain, but another person might have to spend 25 for a similar game. That's like, okay, I've really got to find where the sweet spot is, and it's not obvious.
Yeah, and I mean that's one thing I'm going to have to struggle with when we get started with the stars and outnumber as well, because it's a whole new thing. Like even like with Warhammer Fantasy, it's new. It's got a new way of doing things, but you sort of get a feel for the progression style,
right,
like from the previous editions. It's there's something to touch from, and going into this this game from which we've got really no experience with it all in the party at all. Getting that sort of feel, it'll be interesting to see how quickly that comes, and whether it's a case of by the book. I mean, everything else in the book, and including like sort of the experience system, is very it's up to the GM. It's that sort of style of game, so you get a bit of that. But still going to make you roll your stats though.
It's worth it, especially the first time through. Let's backtrack. So array and point buy. So something that I find is very helpful with array and point buy, especially with new players, is you can backtrack through character creation. Once they've sort of got a few levels on and they're like, I've got a 25 strength. Well, you can backtrack and go, okay, well, that's not possible. So you can go and have a look at the math and see where they've gone wrong.
Yeah, you pick it up. Not unlike my brilliant cross-class skills in our first attempt at 3.5.
That's right. So it's like
off the rails, but it's easy to go back and check them.
And it's definitely a lot harder to do that with rolled stats and even to a lesser degree point buy than it is with an array, because you know exactly where they started, so you know exactly where they can physically be.
Yeah, there's no sort of, what did they roll again to start with? Like, mind you, they still surprise you.
Oh yeah, definitely. But you can definitely be blindsided, but at least if you look back, you can be like, okay, cool, they've done it right. It's just not what I was expecting, or not the power level I was expecting. And it also makes it easy to find mistakes that they've made too. So you're sort of like, oh, well, that person's like, person A is really strong and person B is sort of lagging behind a little bit.
What's going on here?
Backtrack their sheet and you're like, well, they've missed like 6 levels worth of bonuses, so of course they're lagging behind. I mean, it's happened. It's happened at my table for sure. Like I've picked up someone's sheet and I've backtracked and I'm like, you do realize you're jipping yourself out of like plus 10 worth of bonuses here, guys. Oh.
You remember you got to add everything.
And it's happened to me too. Like I've been sitting there at the table and I'm like, God, why am I so far behind these people? And I go back and redo my math and I'm like, oh, It's because I'm like 11 points worth of skills or stats behind. What's going on?
I still have my general case of just oh yeah, I've got that ability.
Oh, don't get me started. Especially in games that have lots of different feats, and you're sitting there and you're like, why is everyone else doing all this awesome shit? And you're like, oh wait, I can do that too, but I just forgot.
It's definitely special. And I suppose, even before moving on to roll stats, because it's really the array and point buys domain in terms of from a pro perspective. You're talking about your multi-attribute classes. Mm-hmm. So if they're characters that write off multiple stats, whatever your like stats attribute system is, they need high in a couple of different places to actually function, or at least equivalent, some sort of balance across them.
Yep.
It lets you get that sort of...
Lets you control it a lot better.
Yeah.
Lets you control where you're weak, and you can dump stats. Dump stats is a horrible word. I really hate to use that word, but you can dump stats that aren't important to the multiple attributes that you do need.
Yeah.
And it makes you weaker in those areas, but it also fixes your multi-attribute requirements, which you're not going to hit when you roll very often.
No way. Particularly if you've got no level of malleability in your roll.
Right.
If it's just a straight down the page.
Yeah.
Like
you may hit it once in a blue moon, but you're very rarely going to walk up to a table with rolled stats and be like, I'm playing a paladin.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever rolled stats and came out and gone, yeah, I'm playing a paladin.
No, it's just not likely to happen.
But yeah. So
something I actually saw on one of the Facebook groups. Actually, they were talking about rolling stats, and it sort of irked me a lot because I'm of the camp that if you roll the stats and everyone's there and sees you roll the stats, you keep them, unless they're like horrendously low. Then I'll probably talk to you about it. But they're like, oh, one of my players rolled 3 18s in front of the table. I'm like, does he get to keep them, or do I make him re-roll? And I'm like, tough shit. You're the one that decided to roll.
He's just that good.
Is he allowed to?
I mean, I'd have a look at those dice.
Well, yeah, but I'm like, is he allowed to elect to not have the 2 12s? Because like, if he rolled a character that was like 14, 14, 12, 12, 10, 8, is he allowed to elect to not have all those low numbers just because they're low? Yeah. Like, it's not really fair to go the other way either. So if you're going to go with rolled stats, you've got to cop it on the chin.
Yeah, particularly as a GM, if you give them that chance and someone rolls a monster character, you're just going to have to deal with it.
Sucks to be you.
And it's part of the idea of the rolled stats game. That's right. There's going to be those sort of disparity. Mm-hmm. The question is how the player then deals with that, and whether or not he rolled 3 18s, but he rolled an 8.
That's right.
Like that is just as defining. In fact, if he's got that many big stats, that flaw is probably the more defining trait for that character.
That's right. And it's it's definitely hard as another player to sit across the table and you've got like a average to below average character and someone else has got this monster. But at the same time, if you all agreed at character creation to roll, tough.
That's the way it is.
That's the way it is.
You don't always need to be the power, the powerhouse in the party. Also, smart play can sometimes trump out.
Exactly, and as a GM, like if someone is that big, they're suddenly a really big threat in combat, and they suddenly get attacked a lot. Not because I want to kill their character, but if you've got a character with 3 18s, chances are, and it's a combat-based character, chances are it's going to be drawing a lot of attention to itself, and that's the character that's going to get picked on. Yeah,
there's a trade-off, and I suppose that's what talking about that. I mean, it's to borrow from your storied past, it's the Jedi conundrum.
Yep.
There is somebody, for those not familiar, the Star Wars Saga edition is the game system that we're talking about, and the Jedi in that had just because of the function of really how skills.
Yeah,
and skill focus and a few things.
Specifically, they used the Force skill, which they could then eventually use for other things as well as just
using quickly snowballing.
Yeah,
and you ended up and you could quite easily end up in situations where to threaten this, it would curb stomp that in the party.
That's right,
and it was something to keep aware of.
So that's where I come back to. I always fall back to arrays a lot in that sort of game, purely because games that are highly focused around combat. I think D&D, Pathfinder, Saga Edition was those sort of games that are focused predominantly around combat. They've got social skills and they've got stealth skills and survival skills and stuff. But if you took a step back and critically reviewed it, it would definitely be a combat focused game.
There's this much combat in this book, and
yeah,
this much.
It's like your entirety of your skills and feats take up 10% of your combat section. It's probably a combat focused game.
Yeah.
And in that sort of situation, I feel like Arrays are going to be a more stable game.
Yeah. I mean, there's plenty going on in most game systems that you can get the flair elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Like the minor amount that you're forgoing in terms of just general cohesiveness.
That's right, and especially with for example, 5th Ed. I haven't played a lot of 5th Ed, so I could be wrong, but I think we've talked about it before, where bonuses in 5th Ed are huge. Like, if you get a +1 bonus, that's big, because it's hard to get a +1 bonus again. It's hard to get more bonus than what you have. So, if your stats are high, you're just better.
Yeah.
And, the 2 that the other person is behind is a lot. And they're not going to make that up easily. So, I think in games like that, they really benefit from having an array.
But it's something that's a little bit more free flow. So, the Pathfinder 3.5 edition D&D, all of a sudden, that one modifier is probably not all that important.
That's right. Well, I mean, you hit sort of level 3 or 4 and suddenly a 1 modifier is literally nothing.
Yeah.
It's the difference between hitting and not hitting is very rarely going to be 1.
Yeah.
The thing with arrays and point buys for me is it new player friendly? And I don't think it is.
Point buy, definitely not.
Point buy, horrendously no. Arrays a little bit more new player friendly, especially if the classing system in the game spells out what attributes are important.
Yeah. But if it's anything that's got a particularly free reign character creation style that's got a bit more, just go pick whatever. All of a sudden, there's nothing there to ground.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is, new players. Like if you were to go with, for instance, our Warhammer Fantasy, where you're running, where the whole thing was randomized down to career pick. Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden there's not that pressure on the new player to try and get an idea of everything.
That's right.
And then make a decision.
The last thing you want when you have a player that's 100% new to role-playing completely, they've never played anything before, the last thing I want to do as a GM is put them in a position where they have to read the entire book.
Yeah.
I don't want them to feel like they have to read the entire book. I wouldn't have the time to read the entire friggin' book. Especially with the time frames that we get a group together. It's a week or 2 weeks we've organised our group and we're getting together for our first game. Or our session 0, I guess. But, I don't want to be in the position where I'm like, you have to read the phone book before you come and sit at my table.
Yeah.
Because whilst it makes them a more learned player, I guess, there's no way they're going to remember it. Because they're going to be
not going to remember
shit
it.
out.
And it's not going to be necessarily fun. Some people might enjoy it.
That's right.
They're going to read it anyway. Ones who enjoy it are going to do it anyway.
That's right. And it's not welcoming to new people to the game either, to be like, hey, go and read this entire book before you can sit at my table. It's very gatekeepy. I feel like, from the perspective of inviting people to come and play with me, I'm like, okay, I'm going to play a game where you don't have to make any decisions.
And then maybe next time we run this system, instead of doing a full random...
That's right.
You just pick.
Mm-hmm.
Or, maybe we, bound it a bit. Or, you get to roll twice and make a decision. There's all those options sort of sitting there around to give that little bit more agency away from the dice now that they're a bit more grounded.
That's right. I don't think there's really anything else we need to touch on in terms of array and point buy. So let's talk about rolling stats. Yeah.
So the question is always, what's the method?
Mm-hmm.
To borrow from D&D, even it over its editions have changed.
Yeah, I think
3D6 straight down the page was my understanding is the sort of original method when that stat system was first utilised. And
I don't think they moved into 4D6 keep 3.
Yeah. And then tables everywhere have different rules on it. Whether it be, all right, we're going to do the 4D6K3 and you can swap any 2 of your stats around, or if nothing's higher than a 15, then you get to re-roll everything, or you average that. There's different rules that float around for people, and it's worth having that thought as a GM before you go into it, as to similar to setting the array limit, changing the way that you're rolling those stats is going to make a big difference to the sorts of numbers that you're likely to have come out.
I mean, it changes the average straight away. When they went from 3D6 to 4D6 keep 3, it jumps the average up by like 1 or 2 points.
Yeah, all of a sudden you're sort of nudging, into your threes of +3, +4 a lot more, and not so much getting your -4.
That's right.
-3.
And then it's also like, when you roll stats, one of the big conversations that you should be having too is there a lower limit that we'll accept? Like, is there an average? If I add all my stats together and get the average, is there a number that you would say, no, that's too low, you don't need to play that character, we'll re-roll?
And is the discussion also there of, if it's low, does the player choose, or is it just a case of it's not going to fit in? Like, depending on the system you're running,
that's right.
It could well be worth having that conversation with the character, with the player, and saying, it's probably not going to survive this particular really system.
Compatible with life.
You roll, 3s down the board. And your player goes, I'll play it, and you're probably going to go.
Roll your first hit die. Cool, you're dead.
It's sometimes common sense prevails.
That's right.
In that, you might have to have that conversation, but generally, if someone wants to play an underpowered character, I've got no problem, as long as they're aware of that. I don't particularly want to have them coming back to me 3 sessions later complaining that they feel weak.
That's right, and you also want to sort of have you need to have the conversation of where's the gap that's acceptable in the group. Like, does the highest player set the gap, and then do you bring everyone up so that they sort of are somewhere in the realm of that person's stats, or do you just deal with the gap? Like,
having that idea beforehand.
You've really got to have that conversation at the start.
You can't spring it on someone who's already cheering about the fact that they've rolled their 3 18s and then go, I think you're too powerful for this, so we're going to have to re-roll your character. You don't want to be having that. Like, right. if you've got that set at the start of, we've got like a hard cap of, if you roll maximum more than twice, your next maximum counts as X. Or something like that, right from the...
That's right. If you have that conversation at the start, no one can be upset. And also, it's important. It's hard because I hate rolling stats in games like that. I don't mind it in like percentile systems, because if you're like 2% weaker than someone else, that's not a big deal.
Not really noticeable.
But if you're 25% weaker than someone else, that's a really big deal.
Yeah.
So you need to have the conversation of where the power, what the gap's going to be. We've done in the past. I have rolled stats with the group in the past, and I didn't mind doing it this way, which was that I basically rolled the array.
I've done that before.
Yeah, I rolled the stats, but then everyone had the same stats that I rolled, and they placed them as they liked.
Yeah, I've done that one before too. Yeah. It sort of straddles that gap. It gives that random element to it, whilst maintaining everyone's got sort of the same playing field.
And in terms of like GMing as well, like if everyone's on the same playing field, it is so much easier to encounter design.
Oh, definitely. Like the moment you got to account for the 18 Nova fighter or paladin, or they can just go, whoop.
The 18 cleric, brilliant. He's dominating the whole world. See, I think to sort of sum up what we're saying, I think for me, if I was to pick an order in which I would recommend to go, I would definitely go like array, probably roll, point buy. Mostly because I hate point buy.
Yeah, and I'd probably be in the same order there, with probably a shout out to the rolled array, for lack of a better way of putting it. Probably nestle that even above the full random.
Yeah.
Again, it's a sort of a system by system question as well, but like some games are explicitly benefit from it, like thinking the Warhammers.
Yeah, the point buy in Warhammer feels so empty.
So it feels empty, and an array it feels out of place because it's going to end up being too even.
Yeah,
like everyone's on like multiples of 5 for all of their stats. Like the benefit of the system is it's granular in stat, but not in outcome.
That's right. Yeah, and like as I said before, if you're two off someone, it's 2%.
Yeah,
so it's not a big deal.
Exactly. Until you miss away at 2%.
Yeah, well, and then hit your friend because you did. Cool. So let's jump on to character concepts.
Yeah. So there's really sort of 2 schools here.
Pretty much.
I'm coming in with the character concept in mind, and this is what it's going to be, and I'm going to try everything I can to make that style of character. Or there's I'm going to come in and see what I get. See what the party makes. see what that. So you have the dice roll, all that sort of thing, and it'll be whatever it is. And it's important to note that that's both from a mechanical perspective, as well as a fluff perspective, like a story side perspective, because they're not completely isolated.
No way. And I feel like if you come in with if you're coming into a random table, you're really not going to benefit yourself coming in with a concept.
No.
That much, because you're going to come in with a concept, you're going to roll your dice, that's not going to work. And if you try and force it to work, you're going to feel shitty. And if it probably won't work anyway. So it really depends. The first part sort of dictates this part a little bit, depending on the system that you're using to determine characteristics and determine those core parts of your character will very much heavily determine how you build your concept.
Yeah, the more player controlled the stat generation system, the more it lends itself to having a concept. Having said that, it doesn't diminish not having a concept at the start.
No way.
So that's probably one of the big benefits once we sort of move from the general stat generation to the do I have a concept or am I just going to see how it goes, is that the stat method, the roll stat method, the array stat method, they only really impact one side of this equation.
Yeah.
So there's that option. Or you're sort of equally available whenever you want it.
So I feel like if you have control and you come in with a concept in mind, it really favours people that are familiar with the setting and the system. Because if you're new to the game, chances are you're not going to come in with a really clear concept. You might have some ideas of like pop culture, that you want to emulate or that you want to be close to or something like that. Like maybe you want to play the Gimli dwarf or the Legolas elf or the, I don't know,
the Constantine mage.
Yeah.
Just to be weird about it.
Or you want to play like Ned Stark from Game of Thrones or...
Yeah, you'll have some touchstone that you might be thinking of playing.
Yeah.
Even if it's as simple as that, I want to be the talky guy.
Very rare for a new player.
Yeah, it is.
It's hard to sort of jump that gap at the start when you're sort of trying to get into the game.
Yeah. And also particularly with a new group. Definitely. As well. You're not quite sure where you're sitting there and how much the group does it. But that's the thing. But as I say, it's not just a mechanical thing.
No way.
So from a concept perspective, you can come in with a thought of, I'm going to play a noble X. And you can kind of make a lot of those work regardless of the stats you roll.
That's right.
So, and you can come in with that full, this is it, they're going to have this full backstory, or you roll your stats and you go, all right, I've got this, and then you plan the whole thing. And go, this is what there is. And have that, like, sort of rich to draw on. But I've found that when I've done that, I tend to forget half of it. And then it ends up being like an emerging concept anyway.
That's right. I think I tend to do a lot of emerging concept sort of deals. I might have like I'm going to go, these 3 or 4, they're going to be the core themes of my character.
Yeah.
But everything else sort of just comes up as it happens. It's not very often that I go into the whole thing of like writing a 3-page backstory. That hasn't happened in a very long time for me. Yeah. Very much, it's more of a, we're in this town and, my character was from here, so maybe I know someone, and it's something you might bounce off the DM as well. Like, you show up in a town, you're like, my backstory, my character's from this town. Is there any chance that maybe I know the person, or I know this person, or I know someone who can help?
Hey, can I go stay at my family's place?
Yeah.
Like, are they still here?
Yeah.
So, what's the tangible impact? And that's why it's worth, if you're going to have a backstory, either prior to rolling anything or from rolling stats you have come up with that concept, it's worth having that conversation with your GM. And GM, it's worth having that conversation with your player. Even in the case of just asking whether they've got that. I'd stress probably not making sure to phrase that questioning as, have you got this ready? And more of a case of, do you have any ideas in this sort of sense so I can make sure that I'm aware of it?
Definitely. And as a GM, you want to include your character's backstories as much as possible.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes it's not, and sometimes, in the adventure you're running, it's not practical. But you kind of want to tie things in so the players feel like their characters aren't just there because they're characters. They're there because
they're in the world.
They're in the world, and they live in the world.
It's one of the downsides to the sort of standard trope of the the lone adventurer who's got no family, and they're the last one left, and they're the only one in their town. The whole town was raised, so they got nowhere. It's like, but what about how do you define yourself without all of?
That's right.
How do we get you involved in this story?
You're only here for the money, because what happens when the money dries up?
Are you hit? And it can work. Like if you've got a character like that in your game, particularly if their perceived arc that they've got for a character is he's like this, but this party is going to be his rediscovery of family.
Yeah, definitely.
Or something like that as a sort of a backstop to that. But the problem you can quickly run into, particularly with new players, is they've got the concept, and hey, would you look at that? We've got 4 lone wolves who have no parents.
We've got 4 orphans with no family whose village has been destroyed. It's like, cool.
But not the same village.
Awesome. It's funny because when I think back to my first character, that was very much my character. Like, he was a priest he's a cleric whose village had been destroyed by werewolves, and he joined the Church of Salinae, and he was sort of coming to grips with the fact that, not all were creatures are bad, and that they can, it goes both ways, but at the same time, we've got to deal with the bad were creatures. And it's like, I had that concept, but then thinking on it now, I would never write a story like that. There's always someone. There's always a best friend, a childhood friend, or something for the DM to be able to be like, okay, cool. You've got some kind of connection, and you've got something in the world that you care about. So absolute worst case, if you really start to fall off the rails, I've got something I can hook you back in with.
Yeah, like if there is nothing going on that no one's picking up, we can try some of these things that are really directly related.
Yeah.
And, sometimes that's really jarring. Particularly for players who sort of go, but why would the villain attack my family? To which the answer is always, why wouldn't the villain attack your family?
That's right.
Particularly if they know who you are. Like, if it's a bit of an arse pull, and it's like, but how do they know who my family is? Like, the big bad evil guy, we sort of messed up their plan with how they were dealing with the trying to get the goblins to raid and force that onto us. But none of those goblins made it out. So how do they know who the hell I am? And depending on the system, they might have ways of knowing that sort of thing. But it starts to feel a bit.
We don't want to always kill someone's closest friend, brother, sister, mother, father.
It doesn't need to be. Hell, they may actually have absolutely no problem. Just saying, hey, I've got this person, and if you're in the right system, it's like, prove it. Like, minor image. Like, sometimes there's more to it than just go, yes, I've kidnapped your long lost friend, or so.
Definitely.
Or your long lost friend calls for aid.
That's right.
Calls for aid.
That's right. Yeah. There's definitely other ways you can use it. You definitely don't want to always, from a DM side, you definitely don't want to always use someone's backstory against them.
Well, that's how you
incorporate it. Don't use it against them.
Yeah, and we use the trope of the orphan, no family, destroyed village as an example of sort of what happens with new players. But you can quite often find that in old players who never sort of change away from that. That's their trope. That's what they like to do. But also ones that have been burned by GMs. Like if you've been playing with a GM that takes every little thing from your character's backstory and then mercilessly beats you to death with it, you're pretty quickly going to start taking some of those hooks out if they're not being sort of used judiciously and sparingly.
That's right.
Like, it's important to have that sort of thing. And I suppose the option being there is really the take it or leave it. There's something there to grab onto if we need it. If you happen to end up going through this town, there's a reason for you to be there. You can go there. You've got some contacts. I mean, eventually you would think, depending on sort of what the travel involved is and what the world or game is, eventually there's going to be that threshold of people are going to know you anyway because you're that big of a hero. Particularly the more modern the setting gets, the more. That's right. In terms of communication or and the like, maybe not so much if you're playing medieval fantasy land,
especially like a low magic medieval fantasy land.
Yeah, like the place 5 towns over may not have heard of you, but if you're playing Star Wars Saga Edition or where it's got the Hollow Net going on, that's right. People are going to know. Like, if you make a big enough name for yourself, you know, you're going to cross the thresholds at some point where people are going to start knowing you. But having that stories getting back to your hometown and them coming to ask you for help or going back and then, oh, look at what you've become. Yeah,
that's right.
And I suppose it's worth touching a bit on, like a little bit on NPCs. I know at that point, the idea of emerging concept in particular. Generally, from a GMing perspective, if it's an important NPC and it's going to be a major character, I tend to have that sort of at least general backstory and things all pulled together for them. Like, it might not be everything, it might not be a perfect idea of what their personality and stuff's like, but it's enough to sort of go on from the start.
Yeah, that's right.
But you're not going to get that option all the time as a GM.
No.
So occasionally your 2-bit NPC, Jim Bob number 7, someone's going to take a shine to him or something, and all of a sudden...
It happens all too often. You have like this NPC, he doesn't even have a name written down, and the players are like, what's his name? And then you go, okay, cool, hang on with the name. And they're like, we love him, he's going to stay with us forever. And it's like, I literally have no information about this guy. I'm pretty much going to write this on the fly as we're going.
Yeah, and writing on the fly is not a bad thing. It is, we were talking about it a little bit before the show of, as long as they seem consistent.
That's right.
Like, you might have little errors and there's, little, fault, fobs around, their personal history, or, he said once he had 6 siblings, but, now he's saying he's got 5, or, and most people aren't going to really notice that.
Your players typically aren't going to take notes that
specific,
in-depth into
so don't need to be that worried about it as a GM.
And also, there's a little bit of it that's like, maybe he tells tall tales. Like, he said that he was from this metropolis and his family was this rich, and then you show up and he's actually not. And it's like, well, maybe that wasn't me being inconsistent. I mean, it was behind the GM screen, 100% was. But you show up and you're like, if you called me on it, I'd be like, yeah, well, he's talking shit.
Yeah.
Everyone does it.
It's like the old, the player spout an idea at the session, they're like, that's a good idea. We'll just let that be the answer to it.
That's right.
Everyone feels happy at the end. And similarly, if they're plotting, they're thinking they're going to get ambushed and stuff, hey,
give them an ambush every now and then. It's funny.
Yeah. So, we've got a bit more to touch on in terms of NPCs later, but I figured that was a good point to sort of bring in that, that it's not just the players who need to who have that on the fly option as well.
No, definitely.
No, it's a little bit more forced on a GM.
That's right. I feel like for me that if you're running it, even in a world that you were part of creating, which we'll talk about another time, but even if you were making a character in a world you're part of creating, or making a character in a world that already exists, I wouldn't go so far into building a concept that I have everything planned out, because I like to have the wiggle room of tying myself into the campaign and using the emerging concept side of things. Somewhere in between the two is where I like to fall.
Yeah.
I've got some ideas, like maybe my character's the son of a king, or he's like a noble, or he's a peasant or whatever. But then it's sort of like bring myself into the campaign. He's a peasant from a village nearby here, or from nearby, or his family has holdings in this area. Something that ties me into the campaign, but also we can expand on it through the campaign. Not just I haven't written everything. Which
is interesting, because I sort of fall in a similar vein as being somewhere in between the two. Except I tend to find that I fall along the lines of here's a backstory, but the personality is very, as we go, we'll see how this all shakes out.
Yeah.
So I've largely given up with the idea of coming in and going, all right, I'm going to play this gruff, no nonsense things, because guaranteed within the session, the group that you're in, that just wouldn't work.
That's right, and it's funny because I tend to not have any personality for my character, because I like to get a feel for the character by playing it, which is weird because it makes it sound like the character's alive and I don't have any control over it. But I like to get a feel for how it plays before I come up with a personality, I guess. Yeah,
you make it aligned to how it actually functions. Yeah. And also sometimes, like if you start off the game and you've had a long streak of not rolling, well, all of a sudden you've just got a slightly downtrodden, unlucky character that you just, nothing seems to, it never gets the rub of the green. Just always and it all sort of plays into how the character interacts with other people, how they take. Are they standoffish on jobs or challenges? And they're like, look, mate, you might want to try and do this. Like, I'll give it a crack if you're sure. But, and similarly, you might have the opposite of you. Like, you might come in and plan that, sort of stand back person, and then just like the first 5 things are like, hype, crit in the first combat set. Mm-hmm. All right, so now this guy is cocky as. He's like, I am on top. I have got this. What orc? Wait, what orc? and having that sort of come into it.
That's right. And it definitely feels a lot different to play. Sort of, it's hard to come up with the perfect personality and then play that personality, because as you said, it might not gel with the party, it might not gel with the game. Maybe the character doesn't necessarily, as you're playing it, maybe it doesn't really embody that personality very well. So yeah, I tend to play my personality out after creation, even for NPCs. Very often, very very rarely will I have an NPC's disposition written down. It'll very much be to do with how the party approaches and things like that. Yeah. Very very rarely will I have an NPC who's outright hostile or outright friendly,
unless there's a particularly good reason for it. Even then, it's like, well, are they just putting on a show because that's what I expected?
Yeah, that's right.
I am a dwarf and we hate elves. They actually play with elves and go, oh, I am a dwarf and I hate elves, except this one. This is my dwarf, or my elf.
Do you have anything else you want to touch on in terms of concept?
I think that's sort of really it. It's really that choice of, or it's not even so much a choice. Like, you make the choice, but whether you stick to it's also a factor of what happens in the game.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't you can have your backstory and your plan, but I would expect that's either going to be challenged, or it's just you're not even going to notice and it's going to morph into something else.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose the biggest thing is to aim for some level of consistency. Again, first few sessions, get a feel for it, but after that point, maybe swinging wildly around is probably it could be a character trait in and of itself.
Yeah.
But if you're finding that your character's behaviour is swinging wildly based on your particular mood, not to get overly, you need to be actors or anything, but some degree of consistency helps everyone at the table.
Mm-hmm.
So they know how, we have a player who's playing a character who is calm and collected and makes makes decisions based on logic. Like, if you come in and you've had a bad day and all of that sudden that thing's just charging into combat, like, it throws everyone else off and can
This with the GM a lot too. The GM sort of starts to rely on the personality you've got built up, and if you play very differently to that, or you start to change your backstory or something mid-game, it starts to become very jarring for the GM, because you're suddenly in this position where everything you planned out no longer works correctly, and you're sort of in the back foot the whole game.
Or it forces a full restructure of how you think about encounters, as an example, is probably the biggest example. Like, if someone has a switch from playing a really deft sort of fallback controller mage, and just one day it goes, now we're blasting. That's a big shift.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of how things operate.
That's right. And your encounters are probably planned around, like, if you're anything like me, when I plan an encounter, I plan around what's on the character sheets, because I feel if someone goes to the trouble of spending points in something, that's something that they're interested in using and interested in playing with. So I feel like I very much want to look at everyone's character sheet and go, okay, cool, I need to include that in the game somehow. It needs to come up at some point and be meaningful.
Yeah, definitely. I tend to fall someone onto it's strange, because as we discussed a little bit last week, I'm very sort of well and truly happy to go in and build encounters and things like that and put in that work. On the fly, I can do in the system, and I'm not terribly against it, but I do derive some enjoyment out of that actual planning thing. But I almost paradoxically quite often don't take into account a lot of the players beyond what I sort of generally determine to be their sort of strengths, weaknesses, and things. Have a broad sort of thing that they're about this sort of level, and that's reasonably close. Like, but I won't build specifically for this particular NPC here is here to counter that.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't often do a counter. It's very much like they use it. But yeah, I see what you mean, for sure.
Yeah,
No.
I mean, unless we're talking sort of, like long-term villains and things like that. No, those suckers have been watching you. They're going to send things against
definitely.
you that are, or design. Send their minions in ways that are designed to test and tax and probe.
That's right. If you have a big bad, or some kind of intelligent entity that's fighting the party, there is no problem with. I've got no problem at all with being like, okay, cool. Well, he's seen you fight like 6 or 7 times. He knows what you do, and if you keep employing that same strategy, his things are going to counter that strategy very quickly.
Yeah, I suppose it's. I mean, it's really sort of a running encounter thing, but it ties into this a little bit in the sense of your foes and encounters fall within this on the assumption that they're intelligent.
Yep.
I mean, if it's an unintelligent beast or something, a little bit less so. Like you don't the concept of it, you sort of react animalistically.
The wolf doesn't try and attack the healer because he keeps healing the guy. He keeps trying to attack the thing that's attacking it.
Exactly. But you're even those NPCs with whom they're not having dialogue, need to have some degree of it going on. And it's so something we can go into later when we talk about sort of our different approaches to encounter design and the like. But yeah, I think that probably takes us off to character concept.
Definitely. We've already touched on random character generation. I don't really see we don't really need to expand on that anymore.
So really, specialization and generalization's sort of the next big thing, and it's as almost everything in role playing. It depends a little bit on your party, both size and composition in terms of players. If you've got people who are, if you've got a large party, all of a sudden, you've got specialization starts becoming a bigger thing because you've got the sort of, you've got the freedom to be able to go, all right, this is our guy for this is our guy for that. And the smaller you get, the more general you sort of get pigeonholed into needing to pinch to cover gaps. Though you can elect not to, and that's an important thing to keep track of as well. But I suppose the big trade-off, though, really is always a question of how much am I willing to invest as a player / a character into those skills that I feel define myself, or skills or abilities or whatever, versus just being able to contribute all the time. And that'll change from game to game, system to system, group to group. Like you may, like there was a long period of time there where it's pretty much, we're playing D&D. Well, all right, first step, is anyone else playing a wizard? And it's going to be blast the hell out of things. And that's not always going to fit in with the party style or...
No, that's right.
And I've found, particularly as I've gotten sort of older, and not to say that it's a better way of doing it, because it's not, I've tended to find myself coming away from the specialization. Like when I first started, I was very much I am going to be the best at this, and found having gaps in time.
Well, it's hard at the tables, like especially where I run, because I don't ever GM for a group above 5 players. I just outright refuse. So if you don't specialize at least a little bit, there's very big gaps in terms of what you can actually achieve. Not so much in terms of skill, because if everyone spreads out, obviously there's no gaps in that much. But it's if you get to a point where something's harder, it becomes very difficult to actually achieve it. So I think specialization and versus generalization for me, I think it's very important that you work out how many players are in the group for one. Because if you've got a 2-person group and you both specialize really heavily,
there's going to be things
really big gaps. So you need to really work out with the group, like where how many players there's going to be and what sort of how that works out together.
I suppose it's worth highlighting a couple of risks as well in terms of depending on the system that you're playing, a generalist approach can run the risk of overshadowing, particularly if you've gone with a full random sort of thing, where you might have someone who's a dedicated fighter, but if you've got a semi-decent stat in it and you dip a little bit into it, depending on sort of how everything flows and runs, Like it's easy to accidentally start treading on toes. Like I think knowledge and sort of like skills tend to see that a little bit more in systems. Generally, when I've seen people stepping on others' toes, it's not so much that hey, we're both like big angry melee fighters. What's the difference? It's usually those out of combat style skills.
Well, I mean, specifically, we've had it happen recently in a Rogue Trader game. I don't know if we talked about it last week or not. I can't remember. But basically, I had a character. He was a spy-based character. There was another character who was a tech-based character, and I was looking at picking up the tech skill. And when I looked, I was like, well, if I take the tech skill, I'm better at him than tech because of how my stats ended up and some other skills and abilities that I had. I ended up being better than him at tech. So I was like, well, I'm not taking it. Yeah. Because if I do that, then everyone's going to want me to do tech, and suddenly his character doesn't feel very useful.
Yeah, and it's the big question of sort of how much stuff is built off of a particular stat. Like your example there, I'm assuming you had a large intelligence because it fed into what you were doing.
That's right.
So that's sort of the basis for it and how easily you can accidentally transfer across.
You definitely don't want to overshadow someone who it's their job to do it. Some systems outright punish you for that. I'm thinking like Werewolf, for example. If you strip on someone's job, they will kill you, or they will try.
They may or may not be successful.
But yeah, you don't want to try. Definitely don't want to be stepping on your players' toes or your friends' toes. You don't want to be. You game with these people fairly regularly. You don't want to take their job off them.
Yeah, that is always the funniest fight in Werewolf. And just somebody treading on each other's toes. I suppose in that specialization, generalization discussion, the big question really in the end becomes, am I going to have fun playing this character when I'm not able to do the thing I specialize in?
Yeah, that's right. Well, that's a good point too. We had that problem in, I think it was Rogue Trader once again, actually, but a different game.
Definitely had it crop up in Saga Edition once.
Yeah?
Yeah, we had somebody playing, and they were playing an ace pilot.
It's funny, I was about to bring up exactly the same situation in Rogue Trader, but a pilot again.
Yeah.
Yep, what's up? Oh, I do remember actually. They weren't very useful. Pretty much outside of piloting, they couldn't really contribute that much.
Yeah, so all of a sudden, whenever we're not in the ship, and of course because of how space combat worked in that system, it was really a case of, well, if we're doing space combat, it boils down to really this one player's having their moment to shine. And otherwise we were out of the cockpit, and all of a sudden just they were filling it all out of place. They didn't have anything that was special. Sorry, they didn't have anything generally to contribute and because of how niche their specialization was in terms of the overall game.
I'd call it over specialization in that situation. They were very over specialized.
Yeah.
Because they were, it really impacted their fun in the rest of the game. And as you said, you've got to really take that into account, because if you take something niche that's a skill, like piloting or something like that...
medicine jumps to mind. Yeah. That's another one.
I mean, if it takes you out of the game in terms of the rest of the game, maybe think really hard about whether that's what you want to do or not. Because if you're only really there for 10% of the game, are you going to have fun?
Yeah. That sort of also flows on from the more niche it gets, the lower the ceiling on how specialized you get in it before it becomes, if it's something that's fairly regular use and you're going to be the best at it, then no harm, no foul, you're probably going to be all right.
Mm-hmm.
But it's that combination of a niche specialization and over specialization within it, and when you've got those two things together in particular, it gets really bad really quick.
That's right.
Both the others can get bad, but those two in combination, I've never seen it not end in a case of, really, that character somehow died.
That's right. The GM and the player need to then come to a discussion about, does that character become an NPC on the crew? Then it's like, I guess getting this ridiculous NPC, but you got to think, and then you have to come to the discussion with the player.
Mind you, that's the situation where that sort of niche thing also works too.
Yeah.
Like if they're going to be that, that NPC now, like to use the pilot as the example, that's probably not going to impact you. You guys just have like a crack pilot.
Yeah.
Like it's gonna impact some things story wise in terms of how you get from A to B, but realistically, from an actual gameplay perspective, you're probably not seeing much difference from that over specialization, other than bragging rights to be able to go like when you're trying to sell passage to people or something like that. We got the best pilot.
We have literally the best pilot.
Don't ask him to cook you for dinner. so and I suppose for one to tie it sort of back into the GMs a little bit with the NPC side of things, it's a risk there to fall into incredible over specialization, and this person's just this. And I mean, for a bit person that shows up once, probably not a big issue. Like it's only really important for that particular thing.
Yeah.
But if any of your NPCs are recurring or anything like that, like
it's a trap. If you fall into over specializing an NPC that occurs regularly, the players will use it as a crutch.
Yeah, so they'll never. We'll just call 10.
That's right.
Well, we need to crack a safe. But I suppose the big one there is if it's something that could ever be considered crucial is if the party doesn't have like a dedicated healer character, don't have a NPC that's floating around in town that's like an incredible healer.
Yeah,
like passable maybe to help patch them up now and again, and then it's sort of tied down, can't do anything. But eventually your character's going to get rich, and all of a sudden they're going to be like, why don't we just pay this guy to follow us around?
That's right.
Like he's like the healer. Like why wouldn't we just have him? Like they in and of itself can be a good thing, but in terms of they're getting involved in the world, they enjoy this, but as I said, it's become a crutch. So if that NPC is all of a sudden no longer available for some reason that's completely reasonable, I mean, it does give you some story fodder, but at the same time, it loses something from it.
That's right. I'm not a fan of that either. I don't believe in propping up the party.
No.
I'll make them pay through the nose if they want like a locksmith, or someone, for example, or if I have someone in mind a character in mind to help them out for maybe 1 or 2 sessions. But I'm not going to give them an NPC in town who will craft their items for them or heal them or anything like that. If you didn't take those abilities, that's on you. That's not on me.
Enjoy the market rate.
You chose not to do it, so you can enjoy the market rate. Unless you really do something amazing for that NPC, you can enjoy the market rate.
Yeah.
I might give someone a cure light wounds wand in Pathfinder or something, but that's all I'm giving them. I'm not giving them another wand ever. So they better be looking to buy.
You can guarantee it's not going to have full charges.
No way. And they're not going to be finding cure light wands, even if I'm rolling random loot. You chose not to have a healer. You made your bed. You lie in it. And I think that's only fair. As a player, like if my group has an NPC that joins us to fill in a gap, don't really enjoy it that much. Like we chose to have that gap. Maybe we wanted to explore what it was like to not have a healer in this game. Especially D&D, where you heal up in a matter of 3 or 4 days. Yeah. Even in the newer edition, I think you heal in a matter of 1. So I suppose the takeaway there for GMs is don't create a crutch for the party in terms of NPC, and don't assume that just because there's a gap there that it needs to be filled. It presents opportunities for story and things as well. And play with it and see what happens. Like let it happen. Let the party not have a tank. Let the party not have a primary damage dealer. Let the party not have a fate. See what happens.
See what happens when everyone's a curmudgeonly old, like a crotchety old wizard, raging barbarian who's barely literate, and just like a petty sneak thief with how are they going to get by? Like they're not exactly going to be silver tonguing their way through the city gates and stuff. That's going to create new challenges and things.
That's right, and it's fun.
Yeah,
it's fun to do new things. Like it's fun for the party, fun for the GM. It's fun to just see what happens and enjoy it.
I suppose, sort of touching off that, speaking about the sort of face style character towards the end there, like having that sort of character but in the party, and how in dealing with that as a GM is originally, if you have a specialist in the party, there's some questions that you've got to ask yourself as the GM as you're in it, is they're always going to try and default to this person because they're the specialist. But is that making sure, is that always a viable option?
That's right, yeah.
Like, just because this person's the charismatic sort of thing, someone might decide they want to talk to that guy for a very good reason.
Mm-hmm.
They might want to talk to the fighter because they're also a fighter and they've got have a bit of a chat. Yeah,
they're from similar departments in like a setting, like, you know, it depends on the setting, but they might have some kind of similarity to that person, and that's why they want to talk to them. And then the face is like, well, you know, he can't really help that much because they don't want to talk to you.
Yeah, and like, it's not to take away from that other character, but sometimes, you know, people have to do things. Sometimes the face character who's not good at combat's just going to get stuck, pinned down by a couple of goblins in combat. Same theory happens
ambushed in the street. There's things that can happen, and it's
social settings as well.
It's also fun to have people play their weakness.
Yeah.
Like, don't do it all the time. Every session shouldn't be the face getting stomped by an ogre, but it's fun to have it happen every now and then. And even from the character perspective, I'm sure, like, I've had fun before where I was completely blindsided by something and I'm like, crap, now I've got to deal with that.
And all I can think of now is melee mage.
Yeah, well, that's right. You know, you're down to your last little bit and you've just got to do something. It's fun to
get put in that situation where you've got to rely on something different.
That's right. And rely on something different. And, you know, you've just got to think with you. You can't just...
Well, that was 10, 12, 14 years ago. I still remember that.
That's right.
It's not the... Yeah, I couldn't tell you a specific instance from that game of, you know, blasting spells or something, but I can tell you the two things that were were out of character for what you would expect for a wizard from that game. Right. The backflip shooting bow and hitting dude in the face, and attacking a troll in melee as a mage because there was nothing left.
Exactly. And when you're put in that position, like, I've had a guardsman, he was an all-out warrior type, and he was put in a social setting. You know, it's sometimes fun to see whether the player will fall back onto their skill. Like, in that situation where I had a very heavily combat focused and I was put in a social situation, I just beat the guy senseless. And it was really inappropriate, and it got my character in a lot of trouble. But it was memorable, and it was interesting, and it put some, like, shine a bit of a light on my character and a bit of his weakness. Yeah. And it made for a good story.
Yeah. We don't send him into the party anymore.
Yeah, we don't send him to talk to people.
Why don't we? Why not? Well, there was this one time.
This person asked him nicely if they could speak to his friend, and he punched their face off.
Yeah. It leads to those sort of, you know, conversation pieces years later is quite often the when things don't go according to plan, and where people who aren't expected to do stuff manage to pull stuff off.
That's
or
right.
Fail spectacularly.
I mean, think about like a heist movie, like when everything goes to shit and then there's like a character and he's forced to do the opposite to his personality, and how much more memorable that would be as opposed to just like going back to the main character and does the thing he always does. It's just, it just adds that extra layer to the story.
So yeah, as GMs, when you've got people with particularly specialised concepts or, you know, mechanical setups, don't be afraid to bring those challenges to other members of the party at times. Not all the time. They've made that character for a reason. It's the sort of thing they're looking to play. And also bring challenges that don't align to that specifically to bear on that character from time to time.
Yeah.
Just to, it helps break up a bit of monotony. You can't always call on your mate who's, you know, a charmer to deal with a problem that you've got, or talk to this particular merchant, or sometimes even that person, that really charming person, just rubs someone the wrong way. It's those sort of things that help make your world feel a little bit more alive.
Especially if you've got some kind of, like, I don't know, racism's a pretty easy one to play off. Like, the elves and the dwarves in this world don't like each other. Something a crutch, like a fantasy crutch I fall back on all the time. But the elves and the dwarves in this world don't like each other, and, you know, your face is an elf and he walks up and is a dwarven merchant. Well, straight away he's on the back foot because he's like, okay, well, that guy hates me and I hate him, or that guy hates me and I don't really have any strong feelings either way, but he hates me still, so...
What I want with you in that flowery speech. And it's that, getting that extra... One, it's an extra challenge for the players and lets them test waters a bit. So maybe they might play a face another time around if they have that sort of memory of having if they manage to pull something out of the fire with some good rolls and a well-spoken argument that seems might seem uncharacteristic, or just happens to work with the person that they're dealing with. There's validation there, and it gives people the opportunity to go later on, well, maybe I might try that.
And it gives them a step into the limelight in social situations too. Social is an easy one to choose because someone's usually specialised in that where the others aren't. But yeah, it gives the character and then also gives the player the chance to actually engage in that side of the game where maybe they hadn't in the past.
Yeah, definitely. And unlike combat, where it's combat being much more structured in most systems, sort of lends itself to that everyone gets involved, whereas quite often social sort of just left in an inferior state. Like you might have roles for it, but it's not like here's what this person does, here's what this person does in very minute detail. So it's easy for those face style characters to sort of come to the forefront and others may not be involved at all.
Yeah, that's right. Well, let's have a look at goals then. So setting goals for characters I think is pretty important.
It sort of borrows from the same concept as the when we were talking before about having a character concept. Like you can have goals pre-planned going in and also emerge. I think is sort of starting to come into the common theme here of if anything that's sort of post-creation is really you can get away with allowing it to emerge as you go forward and tailoring it in and getting that sort of fit as you get used to the character and how it flows.
That's right.
Having some sort of long-term goal. I suppose it's probably worth mentioning at this point as well that we're not necessarily talking about the current job.
That's right. You don't have to defeat the big bad guy. It may not be your long-term goal. Your long-term goal could be, I want to open a tavern. I want to make the sword. I want to make the sword the end all swords.
I mean, as an example, because I think I'm the only one in your game that you're running at the moment who's actually gotten one down on the page. And that didn't happen until session 2. And that was a spur of the moment thing that went, oh, there we go. That fits well with his character. He's come from poor. And it's, buy a house. Just wants to buy an actual house.
But yeah, it's just interesting. Like you need to have, so it gives you an idea of what your character wants, gives you something to play around, and sort of having a goal. It helps guide your character. It helps guide how you play the character. It helps give you that direction.
Yeah, it gives you help for decisions that you need to make. Like,
that's right.
Oh, well, if nothing else, this choice will help me do this, therefore I'll fall back onto that one.
That's right. It also helps give you if you work out a goal, it helps work out why you're with the party. There's lots of reasons why goal making helps.
Yeah, the goal itself is often secondary to the benefits that come from having it. As you said there, the goal itself may never be realised.
No, that's right.
Like it might be an amorphous one in the future that's impossible.
I want to kill the biggest, baddest demon in my setting. Chances are you're not going to do that in play.
But every time you come across demons, you're going to fight him just in case he's the one.
That's right.
Or to practice so that when I finally get to fight the big one.
That's right.
They're going to be a little bit more hot-headed around a bit demon. It helps make that sort of decision thing. And I suppose the big thing to look at for goals, and it's not necessarily a good thing or a bad thing, but it is a big thing, is what goals exist within the party. And it sort of sits more on the GM because there's no requirement really that all players know what everyone's character goals are. Sometimes it would be counterintuitive to do so, depending on how your table is with things such as sort of metagame knowledge and things like that. It may or may not be preferable to keep certain things. But you get a feel from your table for that, for sort of how it is. The GM should always have a good idea of what a character's goal is. One, to give them opportunities to make advances towards it, but also so that they're aware of those sort of conflicts, so that not so that they can avoid bringing them into conflict. In fact, quite often it'll be a good option to just go, hey, we're going to bring these things into conflict and let them have a bit of an argument about it. But to make sure that they're not putting that sort of thing front and center all the time, so all of a sudden it's like, why are these two party members even traveling together? They're always...
you don't want to have two party members that are always in contention. You don't want to have someone whose goal is to save the kingdom and someone whose goal is to destroy the kingdom. Like, to break it down to its most simplest form, you can't have such opposing goals, because they're not going to... How are they supposed to gel together?
And that's that's where the GM really comes in. It's one of those... having those diametrically opposed sort of, I'm here to destroy and I'm here to save. I'd like to say it never happens. It happens. It's like how many times have we sat down for a game of something and someone's like, I'm going to save the Empire, and then somebody's like, I'm going to take over the Empire, and then there's the discussion throughout the game of, is the person taking it over going to save it, or is that destroying it, and how does that impact on this person's goal, and how they trade off of one another?
I mean, it can be fun to have that goal in your game, and like a bit of tension, not massive tension, like that kind of tension's cool, where it's like, I'm going to take over, I'm going to save it, and then they work together and they sort of come to a middle ground. Whereas I'm going to attack, I'm going to destroy it, I'm going to save. They can't really do that.
Yeah.
But also, having the characters with contentious goals gives them the chance to maybe have some character development throughout the game and actually discuss that goal and
like, does this actually make sense?
Yeah, and then maybe they can change their goal over time.
Yeah,
and
like,
that's
there's nothing
that does happen.
Like some systems might, but I don't think I've ever seen a system that locks your goals in place.
No, even like
even that's in the few systems that actually mandate having a goal as well, but to the extent that it's mentioned.
Saga had that thing where if you complete your ultimate goal, you get something, but there was the potential to change it.
Yeah, your destiny for
if
for
you
Saga Edition.
completed your epic destiny or whatever, then you got some bonus thing, but it was possible to change. You couldn't change something you were already completing, but you could change it. But yeah, it's really important to have the GM involved in the goal setting part of the character. I mean, you don't want to have their long-term goal tied 100% to the story.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't really give anything to the character. They're just there for the story. And they're already there for the story. So there's no point having a long-term goal that's 100%. The story is we're going to kill this lich, and this guy's long-term goal is I'm going to kill the lich. Like, who cares? You're already doing that.
In that, if someone was going to come to me and say I was GMing, I'll go, all right, so here's my big bad guy. And they go, I want to have somebody who, something terrible's happened in my past and I'm out for revenge. My first thought is, at this point, is never, all right, so the main villain. Yeah, it might be one of his lieutenants, might be somebody else who's trying to take him down, who's a rival. Mm-hmm. Like, we're both trying to take this guy down. Can I really extract my revenge right now, sort of stuff?
That's right.
So being involved from that point, both saying, being aware that your player wants to have that sort of goal, 2, setting who that's going to be, and 3, being able to make sure that that sort of ties in somehow meaningfully.
And you want the long-term goals to sort of roughly be able to be achieved in a similar time frame between characters. You don't want someone whose long-term goal is like 6 months and someone whose long-term goal is like 1,000 years. They need to be sort of roughly achievable in a similar time frame.
Definitely.
Like a time scale, I guess, is probably a better way to put it.
Yeah, and you sort of start touching into those situations when you start dealing with high magic or long-lived races.
Yep.
Is you start getting into that situation where they go where they start having those. Well, here is my goal. Mm-hmm. I've got the time, so it's easy for it to put it off the phone. Or it's a case of, we're gonna go and do this, and it needs to happen like right now, mm-hmm. because if I don't get this ball rolling, because of how it all factors out, it'll actually slow me down for 50 years instead of 2 years.
Yep. The other one to touch on too is, do you set goals as a party? Because I know in Warhammer Fantasy 4th edition they've included that. There has been
both
other
short
games,
and long term.
Yeah, there's other games that have done it before as well that nothing's come to mind. But I've definitely played other games before where they had a goal setting mechanic, and it was like, there's party goals and there's personal goals, and they each do different things. And if you achieve them, you get different things.
I vaguely recall it might be in Iron Kingdoms.
Possibly.
There's definitely the group types in that, and I think it may just be example goals for those group types or something that they mentioned in there, but
it's just a good idea to have some kind of goals for the group to achieve.
It gives them a reason to stay together. And
the reason that I find short-term goals are also important. Short-term goals sort of, you want to have a short-term goal that's sort of achievable within a few sessions, and that gives the character and the GM something to really build around. So, you can, your short-term goal probably is related to the story in some way.
Yeah, it may not be the full thing, but it's probably going to be, it's going to be adjacent. It's going to be story adjacent.
That's right. Yeah.
It's not going to involve a massive detour to do.
I mean, maybe it's not kill the goblins that are attacking the town, but it's like, once we finish dealing with the goblins, my short-term goal is to go and deal with the fallout.
Yeah.
So deal with the refugees or help the injured or whatever. That would be a short-term goal that would be achievable in a couple of sessions, but has some substance to it.
Yeah, it brings some weight, and I suppose that's probably the thing. Again, I sort of come back on this one too. You're probably best off, particularly for your short-term goals, in seeing what emerges as you just play together and things like that. Your long-term goals, I'd probably recommend restricting yourself to sort of one if you're going to be trying to planning in advance. If you start having too many long-term goals that are preset before you've actually sat down to play, you start going, can I rub these out and restart, or if I lock myself into sort of something that's not feasible?
Definitely.
I think
we've talked about all aspects of that. I mean, the last one would be that the GM helps you determine your goals. It's not definitely a good point. So the GM comes in and, they're running X world, X module or whatever, and they help you determine goals that would actually be feasible within the confines of the world.
Yeah, and I suppose it's important to highlight there that what Tom's not saying is tell them what their goal is. It's saying work with them to set.
You definitely don't want to tell players what they need to do. You want to work with them to come up with something that's tailored to them.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes that style of goal is going to, the world that you're in, or is going to have a major impact on feasibility. And there is, it's also fair to say that a player, there's no reason they can't have an unfeasible goal.
That's right. Yeah.
Like, just because it's unattainable doesn't mean it's bad.
Yeah, well,
if it's completely counterintuitive to everything that's going on in the player story, to the other characters, to the setting itself, probably not so much. But just because it's like, I want to be the greatest, fighter the world's ever seen, and they sort of started as your bargain basement mage setup. Like, you might get there.
That's right.
But it's really not high on the feasibility scale as, sort of a fighter having that, goal of I'm going to be like the best warrior in this.
But it's interesting.
It is interesting, but if there is no, I suppose it's not something. I'm trying to phrase. It needs to be reasonable, even if it's impossible.
Yeah. Although, in saying that, like if someone had the goal that they wanted to kill a god, I wouldn't necessarily tell them no.
No.
I mean, it's cool.
Yeah.
Makes their character set and gives them some kind of background. Like, it doesn't have to be easily feasible. It doesn't have to be easily completed.
Definitely not. Particularly your long-term ones. If anything, they should be.
Although, if it was a fantasy setting, they're like, I'm going to build a space flight. I mean, there's points where you've got to be like, okay, no.
It's like space.
That's right. Yeah.
Mind you, Spelljammer.
Yeah.
There's always that sort of thing, but again, probably the big thing is not in complete 100% opposition to somebody else for a major goal.
Mm-hmm. And also, I wouldn't say 100% in the opposition to the game. Like if it's really hard against the plot that you've got. Like, you're not going to railroad your characters, but if it's like 100% against what you've planned as a game...
Yeah, it's time for a conversation there of, is this game actually what people are looking for? If you're starting to see that. Like, if they're sitting down and going, very high nobility sort of style goals and values in their characters, but the whole thing that was originally discussed and planned in advance of that was, we're grubby knaves that have busting out of the Underdark and we've been prisoners for a while. Yeah. So sometimes it's a case of, do we need to recalibrate?
That's right. Like, do I need to recalibrate my story? Do you need to recalibrate characters? Where are we going to meet?
Yeah, because obviously there's such a... So it's those goals and things are good for helping to pick that sort of thing up early too. Goals,
like short-term goals too, are really good to determine whether the group's picking up on your plot as a GM. Like if you can look at some of the short-term goals and you're like, and you look at the next person, you're like, that doesn't make sense. You look at the next person, you're like, that doesn't make any sense. And suddenly you're like, okay, cool. Well, now I've got to work out. I can see that they're all sort of on the wrong track in terms of the actual plot that I've got out, or maybe they missed something. So you've got a bit of a check and balance to be able to go, okay, cool. Well, I need to focus on this part of the story to get them back on board. If that's the kind of story you run, you might run a very free-form story. Like I tended to do that, but at the same time, I do have things happening, and it's good to see.
What's being picked up and what's
not. Being picked up and what's not. It's good to check people's goals to see, especially short term, to see what they're picking up each session and being like, okay, cool. Well, I can see where they're trying to get to. I can see where I'm trying to get to. Can I bridge the gap anymore to help them?
And I suppose the last sort of thing that I'd probably want to button in there on the discussion of goals really is the goal doesn't have to be reach the pinnacle.
Yeah.
Is probably the other one. It may be they want to buy their own house as an example.
Mm-hmm.
Like it doesn't need to be the best house. Doesn't need to be their new goal after they achieve that goal. Should they be lucky enough to do so, depending on what their goal is and the settings and stuff you're running, maybe to exceed that. But sometimes it is, I want to become a knight, and they're just some little pleb who's not even a squire yet,
That's
floating around. Like, it doesn't necessarily, a goal doesn't necessarily need to be, I'm going to be the best of X, or I'm going to buy the best.
I want to be recognised for my ability in Y.
Yeah, so that recognised is probably is a good way of putting it. Mm-hmm. We want to be recognised as a group of competent adventurers, and that's something that's not going to have like a definitive. Congratulations! Here's your certificate.
Here's your certificate of competence in adventuring.
But that's sort of the thing that you're starting at. Well, people are starting to ask us to come and find us for jobs.
That's right.
So we sort of cross that line, or it lets goals that aren't as definitive give flexibility in terms of how they come, and it feels more organic and real for some of them. Whereas, so we're having a competition in a tournament arc in the city. Really, so that, and it's never happened before in the game, and there's no real coverage of it ever happening before. It's like, well, everyone else has sort of been achieving their goals, but the fighter's goal of I want to be the best in the land. Oh, okay, so that's why we're doing this.
Yeah, that's right. You don't want to feel shoehorned. It needs to feel organic.
Yeah,
hopefully. Cool. Well, I think the next one we have is background, but I think we've covered that. So we've flogged a dead horse if we go back to that. So.
GM assistance, I suppose.
Yeah, let's go there.
And what I mean in terms of GM assistance is,
what can you do from behind the screen to help the players get through?
Yeah, like helping them, come up with a concept that's going to be relevant in the game that you're running, whether that's because you're running a particularly focused story, or if it's set in a particular location, or the theme in the background that's running is something of particular note. For example, in sort of going across those, you're running a tight story, you're probably going to be wanting to go you're going to need an investigator type person in your party. Would be an example of that if you're running a very tight investigatory sort of campaign that's going to...
Well, you should all have skills in something that can contribute to an investigation, because this is an investigation-based game, and if you have no skills in investigation, you're going to feel left out.
Exactly. Or, for if you're talking about like a world one, you may want to play... You want to play a Dragonborn as an example, but... the world that this story has been set in, they're a persecuted race or something. You need to have that conversation up front. So the player might still go, I'm willing to wear that, and that's or it might even be the reason why they're choosing it. But that's that sort of world thing. And then theme is probably the next one. Like for instance, if you're looking for at running, we're going to go undead smashing. The GM giving advice of, or you might want to take a cleric, or you might want to take.
Your ranger might want to take favoured enemy undead.
Exactly. Yeah.
Don't hold that stuff back. It's not fair and it's not fun to get gotcha'd. It's not cool when you're like a ranger and you're choosing your favourite enemy. That's a big part of your class. I need to lean on a crutch there of Dungeons and Dragons. But as a ranger, a big part of your class is your favourite enemy. And if you've chosen the wrong favourite enemy, that's not fair for you to
just
lose
like
a class feature.
So I'm a big fan of, if you're going to have that sort of narrowcasted theme of particular enemies, it tends to be, but even this is all anticipated to be investigatory. Like you're probably going to need a couple of bruises and things like that anyway. But if that's sort of what's going on, getting it out there.
It'd be really helpful though if the bruisers had some kind of investigation skill though.
Yeah.
Like maybe they can speak to people. Maybe they're really good at going through bars and understanding like that kind of subculture. Like it's helpful that they have some kind of skill to contribute. Otherwise, they're just going to feel like dead weight for 75% of the session. So it's good that to get that conversation out of the way and talk to the players, and when they come with their concept, be like, okay, well this is the sort of limitations, or you don't have any skills that we need in this sort of area. You don't want to tell them no, but you still want to give them the clue that, okay, well, you can play that, but just be aware that it may not always be effective.
Yeah. And I think that's probably the biggest thing. Having an idea of what your players tend to play is worth having. Sort of branching off of that. So if you know that your players have a particular penchant for, playing, like you've got 4 people and they all tend to play like arcanist type characters, take that into account when you're designing games. I mean, you might have the conversation and go, hey, we've been playing a lot of these recently, do you want to try something different? Though there's also the other option of, all right, we're going to play a high magic one where it actually makes sense of, everyone here is...
Turn into the skid, let them have what they want.
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason you can't play it like a cabal of wizards. Go nuts. And we're intrigued in the colleges or something like that. So, having that, it gives you that to draw from as well if you know that they run similar concepts. Sometimes I wouldn't say assume that they're going to do it all the time, because you can guarantee the first time that you assume,
then that's the time they play the exact
someone
opposite.
goes, you know what, I'm a little bit sick of playing the wizard, so I'm playing a barbarian this time. I was like, oh.
I'm playing a barbarian that uses exclusively his fists.
The pugilist.
It's definitely important. You need to sort of have an idea of what your players play. Because, for example, like you said before, you used to always play wizards. That would be something you would take into account. Like, okay, well, we always know that Grizz is going to play a wizard, so we can pretty much lock that in. Maybe talk to him about it as well, but, assume. You can look into that. And if you're changing systems, maybe look into the magic system a bit more in depth if you know someone always plays a wizard.
Yeah.
It's worthwhile. Like, when we were about to play Warhammer Fantasy, didn't even read the magic system at all.
Which is funny because I didn't play Bright Mages.
I know, but I skipped it because I'm like, we're going to go with random character creation, and the chances that someone gets a magic class is like 2%. So I'll skip it and I'll come back to it if I need it.
Yeah, it's like, why read the elf stuff? Because
that's right.
It's literally a 2% chance.
So, it helps inform you what to read in the rulebook as well, which is helpful from not wasting your time perspective. You don't want to spend hours and hours or trying to understand a system and then find that no one ever plays that, or no one ever plays that, and you've read it anyway. Realistically, you just waste your time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good to have that knowledge, and it's good to come back when you have time and read it.
Yeah, and it gives you sort of that broader perspective to be able to go, oh, here's a threat I can use against the party.
That's right, but if you're short on time and you're reading the rules for character creation next week, you've only got a week to read it and you're busy at work or whatever, skip the stuff that the players don't often use.
Yeah, someone asks, we'll have a quick flick through it.
That's right. We'll have a quick flick through it. If we don't quite understand it, we'll reread it and we can fix things on the fly. It's not a huge deal.
Yeah. That said as well,
I think it's really important for the GM to have a really thorough understanding of how character creation works.
Yeah. That's probably the big one, particularly when, for group character creation in general, but also from a case of...
You're going to get the questions. Like, they're going to ask you.
Someone's going to ask, and you're the person.
You're the thing between them and the system. You're the one that's got to arbitrate the rules. It's best for you to understand them very, very thoroughly. Character creation, usually it's about a chapter. It's usually not that hard to read. Give it a flick through, really understand it really deeply.
Yeah, and have at least cursory knowledge of what the different high-level choices are.
Yeah.
Like, I don't expect to know every feat or anything like that, but...
This is the classes, and this is their rough ability, or this is the jobs, and this is their, this is what defines them. Yeah,
and have that sort of thing in mind, because someone's going to ask you, oh, what does this do?
Particularly if they've got strange names too. Like if you're coming into a new system, this is the races and this is roughly what they translate to, or, this might be what you're used to having that race called, but this is its name in this system. I hate when people do that as a writer, but anyway, it's like, that's an elf. By every possible definition, that's an elf, but you've called it something else. Yeah. But they do. So you've got to have that sort of reading and that grounding to be able to go, okay, guys, well, the thing you're choosing is for all intents and purposes an elf that's green.
Yeah.
So it's good to be able to give them those analogs.
Yeah, it helps with understanding, definitely. And it also, it just generally speeds it up.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose having a good sense of, it's going to sound weird, economy in character creation is a good thing as well. Just from, as a GM, having the ability to eyeball and go, well, I know that they got X amount of, gold, silver, copper, credits, insert currency here, new yen for the shadow runners out there. Have a good idea of that so you can eyeball.
It's probably also worth knowing that for when you're working out like rewards and things for the initial mission.
Definitely.
Because if you're like, the party's got like 20 million yen, for example, and you're like, I'll give you this job for 20,000, they're gonna be like, no.
Exactly. But yeah, having that idea in mind, because like someone's going to ask a question along those, particularly if you're using a new system, something along the lines of, I'm thinking of playing this particular type of master character. Let's call it, we're looking at playing some sort of ranged combatant, probably an archer or something. It's probably worth knowing whether that's a viable option to start with. Yep. Like if you're playing a system where, getting a bow is expensive, it might not be available to somebody at character creation.
Yep.
And whilst it may not necessarily be a disqualifying thing in them wanting to play that character, making sure that they've got that knowledge and they go, oh, I'm thinking of playing this. Okay, but you should know that, it might take a little while for you to actually start picking up some of those, like whether it be, equipment and things like that.
Pretty important abilities. Like it could take a while. Say for example, someone wants to dual wield. Like most systems, that's fairly intensive, and it's like, okay, yeah, cool, you can, just be aware that it's going to take you a little while to be good at it. Yeah,
and there's every chance that, depending on the system as well, that it may cause you to be poorer for it in the interim too, and to be aware of that. I suppose I'm not even sure if we actually wrote this one down as something to talk about. That's the idea of this is what my character is going to be built out to level 20 to use a D&D parlance, versus I made the character now and advancing as I go.
Yeah. I think you really lose something if you pre-plan to level 20.
Yeah.
Depending on the campaign, obviously, but I feel like you lose something, and I also feel like you have, I think we did discuss last week, I feel like you have that pitfall where, you've pre-planned to level 20, but your character doesn't really come online until level 13. It's pretty crap until level 13, and then it actually turns on and it's good. It's like, you really don't want to have that point. You don't want to have to go through...
the first 5 levels being ordinary.
Even the first 3, it's a long time.
So I'd suggest that, if you're going to go down that route, and more power to you, I enjoy it occasionally, doing it, and building it and seeing what a level 20 character is likely to end up like. But bear in mind that whenever you're doing something at a particular level, all of a sudden economy choices make sense in a different way. So if you're down fighting goblins at level 3 and you're having a real trouble with keeping them away from a particular party member or something like that, it always seems that they manage to get at this guy. Sometimes the heads up play there is, I'm going to pick up a teamwork feat that lets us switch positions or something like that to give us some more mobility around it. But if you're just going, and if that's a recurring issue, and then
That's
maybe,
right.
if you take that, all of a sudden it throws out your entire plan. So overcome by events is probably to watch out for. Or you start ignoring those things and just sit there and be like, I'm not contributing yet. Particularly if you're looking at some sort of
hey guys, I'm not contributing right now, but I promise you in 10 levels I will be.
Why are we dragging this guy
cool,
around?
we're just dragging this dead weight around for 10 levels. Sick.
So it's something to keep in mind.
It's funny because you mentioned that you do it sometimes. I've done it in the past, but I've done it in systems that have retraining as an option.
Yeah.
And I've retrained into it. So I've gone from, I've had that very specific stuff that worked as I was leveling, and then when I hit the point where it should all kick in, I've spent the time and the money to retrain everything to the point where I want it to be.
Yeah, and I have to point out, these days when I do it, I tend to take into account that I know certain things that are going for sessions, for systems. I don't tend to do it as much now for things that I'm not as familiar with. But if I sit down and go, say you were to go, we're going to run Pathfinder. I got a rough idea of sort of things that are going to be, at lower levels, this is going to be a problem, and I can make that work in my head. Is that something that's going to annoy me?
Well, it's funny because you can just, if you were going to play with level 20, you can just keep yourself some spaces. Give yourself the wiggle room, I guess.
Yeah, make sure that you got wiggle room or,
Make sure you do have the space for the 2 useless feats that, they don't necessarily work really great with this build, but they work really well with this campaign.
Yeah. so taking that sort of stuff into account, because, if you're not having fun for the first 5 sessions, what are the chances that you're going to be hanging around for the 50 sessions going to take for everything to come online when you think you might have fun? Go forth, have fun character building, things like that. Have that general concept of where you're looking to head in, but I can't really recommend highly enough the idea of maybe don't lock yourself into it.
That's right.
And build in a way that sacrifices your fun at the time.
Definitely. The other big one for me is I think that the GM during character creation should definitely try not to say the word no outright. Unless it's really counter to everything, just try and work with the players so that they can play what's fun for them.
Yeah.
Because they've got to have fun too.
Yeah. And generally, you can get away with something like, what do you mean? Like, how do you see that working? Because your initial reaction might be no, and then they go, oh yeah, I was sort of thinking this, and you go, oh yeah.
That's right.
Like, I can see that working. Like, I didn't think that. They might have a weird take on it. Like, I think the one that jumps to mind is before every character class under the sun existed in Pathfinder or D&D and splat books and things like that. Someone going, I want to play a fighter in this really courtly intrigue game, and what they're actually trying to say is, I want to play something like a samurai, where it's got that sort of courtly diplomatic bent with a bit of a build in that space.
Yeah.
But they're a warrior style
or a duelist. Like duelists weren't a thing back in the day, but if you built your whole fighter the right way, he was a duelist, and it's like, okay, cool. Maybe you're not like the noble kind of guy, but you're like a duelist, and you fit in the room. It makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's worth having the conversation. Like okay, what do you mean by you want to play whatever it is?
Yeah. You fit in the maybe like I'm going to be the Yojimbo for player X over there because it puts me in the room. I figured that we might run into a situation where occasionally we need some muscle. You go, oh yeah, I can understand that, because quite often your idea of sort of where you're going for as a GM, you might, whilst you might not intend to be railroading players or anything like that, you're still going to have that sort of idea in your head of where it's going.
Yeah, you have to have some
kind of plot. And that's going to spurn some degree of, oh yeah, that doesn't work for me, and making sure that you don't just instantly react with a no, you can't do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Having said that, occasionally you get just flat out insanity, and
you're going to get stuff that's just a no, but you got to try not to say no. But occasionally you will get someone just come to you with something balsam or retarded, and you're just like, no.
Yeah, probe it a little bit to find out exactly what they mean. Don't just assume that it's a stupid idea because of how you've initially interpreted it, because what you're thinking and what they're thinking may not necessarily gel. It may not necessarily match.
That's right, you might not be on the same path. Like when someone comes to you and says they're going to make a warrior, for example, in your setting, the idea of being a noble court, and then they're going to make a warrior, your first thought probably isn't going to go to like a duelist or a bodyguard or something like that. You're going to go straight to like, you're going to play like a fighter type. Like what does that even mean in this setting? It's just helpful to come back and be like, okay, cool, yeah, well, let's have a talk about it. What do you mean? Oh, you mean a bodyguard? That makes perfect sense. No worries.
Yeah. So you're having that next step. So we're just reading chat.
Oh yeah, we changed our layout of our room so we can actually read chat. So.
Oh, somebody on the.
They had the same thought as we did.
Go chat.
Baildar. Anyway, thanks for joining us and your contribution. Yeah, so you want to try and work with your players. It's not worthwhile just sitting there and barring them. And it's like these are the 4 characters that you can play. Like there's definitely a space for that. There's definitely a time for that, but I don't think that's definitely all the time.
Particularly if you're looking at something that's hyper focused, and everyone's sort of on board with that, or it's a function of time. We've got a really set period of time to play in. It doesn't really lend itself well to an expansive sandbox style game, so it's going to be highly restricted to this sort of area, which means that character options and stuff are going to have to be somewhat limited to fit within that.
Yep.
It's something to take into account as well, and it may not be just a game factor. It may be a logistics factor for your gaming group and things that impact on this too.
Yep. Cool. I don't think there's really much else we can say about character creation. Feel free to hit us up, chat with any questions, but we'll probably just cover them at the end of the show.
Yeah, I suppose we can touch a bit more on NPCs.
Yeah. Definitely the character creation side for the GM, I guess. They've got a big job to play.
Yeah, and it shares a lot of the concepts with character creation for players and things. It's just a slightly different look at it. And there's some things that are specific to the GM and their NPCs that aren't necessarily as big in such an issue for players. And you also probably want smaller concepts so that they're easier to keep track of for you.
Yeah.
And things that are reasonably easy to grab a hold of. So you're also running a risk of falling into repetition if you're not having a bit of a think about your NPCs.
Yeah.
Like Sergeant Johnson, Sergeant Jackson. What's the difference?
That's right.
Which one's which again? They were so similar I can't tell them apart. And like you're going to get some of that anyway. But if anyone's sort of any NPC is sort of recurring, or is either likely to be recurring, or your players keep going back to these guys, sort of if they go back more, if they go back once, and it's not just sort of like we're dropping this back because we said we were before.
That's right. Yeah, I feel like if a player intentionally goes back to an NPC, then that's an NPC you're going to have to flesh out a little bit.
Yeah, it needs more for it than just a case of, here's what I decided this random NPC was going to be like at the time.
I mean, probably going to try and keep it consistent to what you randomly decided.
Yeah.
But you need to expand on that and have it there ready, because they're probably going to keep going back to that person now. For whatever reason, you've made them memorable. Good on you. Congratulations. Now you've got to actually work with that.
Yeah, and
we do see your question, Crimson. We'll come back to it at the end, I think.
But I suppose keeping it in line, and like most of your quick things, you're probably going to have something. You can come up with something that'll fit to that, whatever you spur at the moment. What I was really thinking about then was Marak the Flamboyant merchant that keeps randomly appearing in different games, in different systems, and wildly appeared in like a sewer in an abandoned city on some plague planet.
Look, you can definitely have fun with things like that for sure.
It's like, just how flaming can this character get?
If you've got some kind of like recurring character that sort of is trans-dimensional or something, I guess, it can be fun for the group. It just depends on the silliness level that you're willing to accept and the group's willing to accept.
Yeah, maybe not pull it out in your super serious group that's, and just pull it out of nowhere. But it's a touchstone for players who play across multiple groups with you and things as well. Like it gives them a little something like an inside, chuckle at, I recognise this guy. It's also a chance to subvert their expectations. Like, I know this guy. Wait a second, no, I do not know this guy. So, NPCs, I suppose starting from top down is probably a good way. Your big bad overall, for lack of a better way of putting it. The first one that jumps to mind for if you're building that NPC is they need a goal and
it needs to make sense.
And it needs to make sense. Like it doesn't need to it needs to make sense in that it's a believable goal that someone could come up with given their circumstances. So if your guy's a little bit crazy, it's all right to have a little bit of a crazy goal. But if they're otherwise like a cold, rational, I'm in this for me and what's best for me. And I'm doing something that's, I'm just going to just tear this kingdom down. But this is the base of your wealth.
That's right.
And it doesn't, there's a dissonance there.
Yeah, you really need to have a goal for the big bad evil guy that makes sense for them. And they need to feel like they're getting something out of it. There really shouldn't be, there really shouldn't be the goal, or should very rarely be used the goal that I'm going to destroy the world. Unless there's some kind of religious reason to do it. It's like, you live in that world, so that's going to affect you too.
Yes. What the players may see is, I'm here to destroy the world. But somewhere along the line, they're going to have to find out, this person believes in, as you said, it might be a religious thing. They believe in like a reincarnation of the world sort of thing.
Or he's like destroying the world so he can take over, so he can recreate it in his image or something. There's got to be something.
It's like the final moment of apotheosis is drawing all the power from the world, and then once he's the god, then he can reconstitute it.
Yeah.
Like there needs to be some inherent logic to why they're doing something.
Right, maybe the players don't find out for ages, or they get hints at it or something.
They might not even know.
They may never find out.
They might not even know what the goal is.
That's right.
Or they might only ever get hit on the peripheries and go, all right, we're going to deal with this person because we're sick of their dudes annoying us. Mm-hmm. And then they get there and they find out, oh, well, okay, old mate was doing this because there's something worse. Or
I love that one. It sounds like a gotcha, but I love that one where you rock up and you finally kick the shit out of the big bad guy as you saw him, and then you're like, oh, Jesus Christ, look what's coming. Look what he was trying. He was consolidating all his power because, and it's like, oh, now we've got to deal with that, and we don't have that power base.
Yeah, I tend to, as you said, like it can feel a bit gotcha. But I tend to like using that sort of one to deal with if you've got, for lack of a better way of putting it, people who aren't players who haven't been particularly active in trying to find out why something's being done.
Definitely.
Like if they've taken a reasonable chance to try and figure out why is this person doing this, or why is this group doing this, or something like that. Like you might not let them find it right out in total, but you might get hints towards those sort of things. Mm-hmm. But if they've taken no action, they've just gone, we're sick of this dude. We've seen this one thing go sideways, and we've decided that they're evil. And players get blinders, and GMs get blinders too. But players all get blinders that if they've sent like a bunch of jackboot thugs down into town, just a bunch of soldiers, and it might just be that. Their orders that have come down from on high is, do what you can to keep everything civil. And that particular squad of guards is
overzealous
and done something. And then the players react to it. Then the players are being hunted down by they slaughtered a whole squad of my guards. So, that's going to get investigated. And so more of these guards show up and players just go, oh, well, the last ones of these dudes were dicks and we got in a fight, so... And then all of a sudden it's like entirely reasonable for a local governmental structure to appear to be they're hounding us. And really it's just like a reasonable reaction to a couple of murder hobos who killed an entire squad of guards. Like, sometimes your big bad evil guy may not be the one that you initially planned, and it could be somebody who was just an outgrowth of
They might not even be
a realistic world.
That's right. They might not even be evil at all. It's the way that the party sort of found something and it sort of has turned that way, or they're just the antagonist of the party. They're not necessarily evil. It's just that they're counter to the party.
Well, on a sort of smaller scale, I'm glad you mentioned the antagonist as opposed to an evil guy. There's plenty of fun to be had with things like the obstructive bureaucrat, or the soldier that's I've got my orders, mate. And them going, even if it's as much as just going, I've just got to, I've just got to get the clearance that says you're allowed in here, and something like that, and how people deal with that. And there's a lot of things. It's like, oh yeah, sure, why not, or whatever. It's interesting how often people are like, aha, I am righteous, therefore we are the heroes, therefore we must. People will still go occasionally. Why would I let you in here just because you say so?
That's right, yeah. It's definitely really good practice for a GM to have people only know about the heroes who should know about the heroes. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
The rival adventuring parties one I don't use enough.
I keep planning to use it and go, and whether that be rival and they're attempting to attain the same goals, or if it's an outgrowth of sort of what I was talking about before in terms of all right, we've sent all of these like watchmen and a couple of soldiers and stuff to try and deal with these, pick these guys up. Obviously that works. We need to get a specialist. Bam. Like rival adventuring party actually trying to bring them in, or if they've got competing goals, or if they've got the same goal.
I think it's interesting when they have the same goal and it's like a race. And then maybe at some point they start to work together. But I think it's a really cool idea, and it's really fun to have that sort of rival adventuring party. It's a really awesome one.
I like the idea of being able to use that to seed unexpected situations in. Mm-hmm. Haha, we've gone to go clear out the kobold warren, and they get there, and there's a shitload of dead kobolds. And it turns out that it's this rival adventuring party that's on the same line as them. But, depending on what evidence is left behind, like, it could easily look like, something bigger and badder is killing off all of these kobolds. Like, is it a case of, oh, well, we don't care, the kobold problem's dealt with, or, oh shit, what's going on here? Like, what's caused, like, an entire warren to be eradicated in an area where we know that they don't send out, like, soldiers and stuff to do this sort of job, and adventurers are rare.
No, it's definitely cool, and as I've said, it's something I've always toyed with doing, but I've never done.
I think the sticking point I often get is, I'm not sure, given everything else that I'm more than happy to have running in background and things progressing when players are, the idea of another party moving along the same chain of events, or same related chain of events, is I always get a little worried about where I place them. Mm-hmm. Like, they can't always be, because if they're always ahead,
that's right. It feels you don't feel. It doesn't feel good.
It feels like do I just have instead of a GM PC, do I have a GM party that's going on along the side, and trying to make sure that it's not giving across an idea of this is the way you're supposed to be doing it to the party, mm-hmm. even if it's only on sort of like a semi off screen sort of thing. Like, they came through and like, what's going on here, and they can see like evidence of there being, for instance, like traps that have been laid for the kobolds and things. Mm-hmm. There's evidence that somebody's tried to smoke them out, or you can see chalk lines on the walls that are pointing in particular directions, and are things that particularly if you've got newer parties, the things that they might not be doing. Mm-hmm.
That's definitely that's something to look out for. You don't want to make the party feel inferior to the rivals that much.
And part of it's like, it's walking the fine line of, hey, that's a good idea, maybe it's something we should bring in, and then you can if they're using that, you can tie it in later in a because they picked that up and took it on, they managed to avoid something or overcome something. Whereas if they've ignored it and went, we don't need to do it like that, it might be their undoing, and it's a case of hubris. But there's a fine line of, this is interesting story, and when am I bashing players?
Yeah, that's definitely true. You don't want to beat your players. You don't want to teach your players a lesson in that sort of sense.
No. And
if that's, you sort of want to have the discussion rather than beat them.
Yeah, and like, I suppose the big thing really is make sure it feels consistent, so that it's not suddenly, haha, they're there. Mm-hmm. What do you mean they're there? We've just come through a part that's like a single entry point in there. Like, how did they get in here? Or anything like that. I think
if you were going to do the rival adventuring party, there should be multiple objectives, and they're completing some and you're completing some, and at some point you sort of cross over. And maybe you don't know them by name, and they're out there, they're doing stuff, but at some point you're going to have to deal with them.
And you're seeing evidence of them here and there.
Yeah, and you hear stories of them, and they probably heard stories of you. But at some point there's a crossover where you're like, okay, shit, we've really got to talk to these guys and work out what's going on, or see if we can pull resources, or see if we've got to deal with them in a more aggressive way.
Or it's a case of, we can see they're aiming for the same thing, but what they're doing is screwing up what our plans are.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, we're trying to play off these goblin tribes against one another, and these guys just have just been annihilating this one particular tribe. It's like, can you not? Like,
But it definitely boils down to like having the right backstory for that group. So it's the things you need to really think about as a GM is the backstory of the character. What makes sense? Their motivations. So why are they motivated to do this? Because they weren't there when you got interrupted by the big bad guy and you found out the big piece of advice, the big thing that makes it so that you need to take him down. So why are they doing it?
Yeah, truthfully, if you've got some sort of reasonably secret piece of information that's allowed you to get you to a certain place, particularly if it's something like, the big bad in their escape dropped something or something like that. If that's led you specifically to a place, the NPC party probably shouldn't rock up there or end up somewhere that requires having like that. I mean, they can end up there as long as there's a reasonable explanation. If somebody asks them, like, hey, how did you guys figure out to come up here? Oh, well, we were dealing with these kobolds and we found, a whole bunch of dead ones, and we figured it, and our, tracker here was able to figure out that it was actually, some lizard men further up within that had done that and seemed to be, displaying dominance, and that got us thinking, well, we've got lizard men, we've got kobolds and stuff like, is there a dragon up the top of this mountain?
Yeah.
And it might just be as like, we're just going to check it out because we think this is what might be going on because of things that are, stories we've heard and stuff like that. Whereas the reason the party that's playing is there is because they've actually got a definitive link from here to there to there.
But you definitely need to work that out as a GM. Like what it's hard to separate your knowledge from the NPC's knowledge, but you really need to think long and hard when you're talking in terms of an NPC or when you're talking about plot around an NPC. You really need that NPC's motivations and their knowledge to really match up with just what they know, because they can't know everything about the party all the time.
Exactly.
It feels cheap as a party member.
Yeah, and that's why if you're going to run something along the lines of like, you're being chased down by a rival group because, the kingdom finally got jacked, that group shouldn't be, unless you've been, quite obvious in your methods of doing things and you've been doing it for a while and you're a particularly big threat, that party that's coming after you shouldn't be tailor-made to fight you.
That's right.
It should just be like a random ragtag bunch of adventurers.
Much like yourself.
Much like yourselves. And, like maybe if it's something like, oh, we know they've got a mage amongst them, and if the wizard's floating around somewhere away from the party when the encounter happens, they're going to be ready for the idea that this wizard's going to show up eventually. Like there's being reasonably consistent in terms of how they know things and stuff. And I suppose you touched on it with NPC knowledge. Knowledge and motivation are probably the two big things. Everything else you can kind of wing a bit based on those two things. If you've got a rough idea of what they know, and you've got a rough idea of what their motivation is, even if that motivation is something as basic as I just want to go home at the end of the day and make a living for my family, that will inform going, oh, we've got a whole bunch of adventurers in town, I'm just going to sell them stuff and they can get out. They're like, leave me alone.
Or like the guard who's got his orders, if his motivation is to attain a higher rank and someone shows up and they're like, I want to go through there, and he's like, well, I've been ordered to not let anyone through there, he's going to stick to his guns and say no.
Yeah, but in the same vein, guard probably wants to go home at the end of the day. So if you rock up with 3 fighters and a wizard and do something that quite obviously demonstrates that there's no chance of victory, like silver a day guardsman's probably going to go, you know what?
Definitely don't get paid enough for this.
Do not get paid enough for this. Yeah.
It's just you've got to keep everything's got to be consistent. The players don't have any special knowledge, so it's not fair that the NPCs have special knowledge, unless they do have that knowledge, obviously. Like if they have some way to gain that knowledge, fair enough. If the party's constantly been a thorn in their watch's side, and suddenly the watch has little groups that are intentionally, specifically tailored to counter the party, that's fair enough.
Yeah, but it's not for the first.
But not for the first encounter, and probably not for the second encounter.
Yeah, like that sort of thing is like an investment of time and resources and training, and the flip side of that is, and it sort of goes to a broader thing for discussion as well in terms of character concept and stuff, because this part's somewhat important. It's just reminding me of it. Like, what authority do the players have? Like in the world they're playing in, if you've got a paladin in the world in there, like, is their order actually empowered to do anything? Like, are they, there's the, old paladins, like sitting in divine judgment to, or making a decision, oh, well, I'm going to mete out justice to this dude and like striking them down. Like, do they have the legal authority to make that decision in the world that you're setting?
That's right.
Like, if they just start, summarily executing people and going, they're evil because, I feel it.
They're evil because I have a hunch. I have a feeling.
And like, how ubiquitous are those sort of people? Like, if paladins are common and stuff, and everyone knows they've got these sort of abilities, and like that it probably leans more towards they might be able to get away with, like, this person was a bad news, this thing, this whatever. You know, it was inherently evil, if that's a thing in the world. There's more chance that they're going to have that leeway to do that with, you know,
That's right.
less questions. But if there's like, you know, like a paladin is a particularly rare occurrence, and they're in a kingdom that's not particularly divinely magical or magical at all, and you're playing that sort of like a low fantasy world where magic's creeping in, and the players are sort of like the first generation of adventurers or something. Yeah, someone just rocking up and going, yeah, they're evil. It's like, how did you know? Like, but okay, they might be evil, but what did they actually do? Like, you just randomly killed Joe from down the street. Like, he was evil. Like, congratulations, but
What does that mean?
like having that, one, there'll be ramifications, but it's also important for the players to know that too, so you don't have a situation where, all right, you make a guardsman in like one of whatever a 40k game, whether it be Dark Heresy or something along those lines. Like, is guardsman just a generic term that's being used in this area, or are they actually a guardsman? And not only is there the privileges given the setting, but you know, like, what are the costs that are associated with that? Like, for instance, you know, they may hold rank and rock up, and you know, if there's an attack or something, if they're a sergeant or a lieutenant or a major or something like that, and they rock up to a situation, and there's comparatively junior ranked.
That's right. They get some authority there, and they'll be able to take control of the situation.
Yeah, like, and you should have that figured out at the start. Are they actually, and is this representative of something? The paladins again is with the, like, do they actually have the authority to mete out justice?
Yep.
And they might, or some orders might. How are paladins made is probably the biggest question, and anything that's sort of along those lines. Like, I'm sort of harping on paladins because it's got that divine connotation and, you know, a tendency towards superiority complexes.
Oh yeah.
But like, if your clerics and your paladins are born and not made in your world, how do the religious organizations impact with them? Like, can a paladin get away with rocking up to a town, there being, you know, a church with some clergy in it, and going, I speak for Sailor and as proof of that, I have my powers. They are God-given, and if I stray, they will be, my God will remove them from me. Therefore, the decisions I have been making are right, and I'm obviously a conduit for our God. Do they effectively become something like a prophet, or are they like immediately held equivalent to a particular ecclesiastical rank? Like, they're things to consider, because, you know, the established clergy might not like it. They got a paladin who might be like, if you've got a paladin oath of vengeance using the 5th edition terminology that's going around like avenging shit, and the clergy in conjunction with the state are actually trying to like make peace with this enemy nation or something, and you've just got this paladin that's going off on a rampage. How can they say no? You can't do that to the paladin, who turns around and goes, well, the God signs off on it.
That's right.
Who are you to tell me that I'm not allowed to do this? Yeah, there's social implications to certain powers. The conduit to the divine is probably the most problematic of it.
Definitely. And also, like, there's other positions as well, like nobility in a low fantasy game. Nobility tends to have a lot more authority, can do mostly whatever the hell they want. You know, you've got to take that into account with not only the NPCs, but also the PCs. You need to know where they stand versus each other.
Yeah, and I suppose that's a good thing, like that social standing stuff that's in the new Warhammer Fantasies.
Yeah, it makes it heaps easier to know.
So it gives you an idea of, alright, so these are the comparative ranks, and like, it may not be as clear cut as this person is able to give orders to X. But you can at least get, like, well, these are my betters, these are different. This is a Lord.
That's right. The Lord is definitely going to have a lot more clout than the peasant, and it makes sense because it's numerical.
It's got a nice scale to it. But yeah, as you're saying, like, do you grant authority from, kingdoms, governments,
That's
towns,
right. Who
villages,
listens to this person?
like, to the party?
Yeah.
Like, is that part of a reward at some point? You are honorary knights, and this entitles you to X, Y, and Z.
Well, you're honorary politicians, and we're sick of you trying to take over our city. So here's this mad land really far away.
Yeah, you guys are really popular and really close to causing an uprising. See us.
Here's this land that you can have, but look how far away it is. No.
Yeah, so that style of world ramification and how your NPCs interact with each other is very interesting because using that paladin example, they just wanted that whole village is going to get pretty pissed off if they just random. As far as the NPCs know, they don't necessarily have the same knowledge that the players do. In fact, they pretty much don't.
That's right.
Ever. So if they kill somebody, it's like, that person.
I mean, imagine if the party just rocks in, the mayor's well liked, but the mayor's been doing something dodgy behind the curtain. The party rocks in, kills him, and moves on. Doesn't really explain anything to the peasants. The peasants are like, what the hell? You just killed our mayor.
Yeah, that's getting reported to the town over.
He was a legend. And then you get to the next town, and they're like, oh, we don't like you. And you're like, why? And they're like, you killed the mayor over there, jog on. Well, the party needs to understand needs to really sort of understand the ramifications of that. But it needs to make sense from an NPC perspective as well. Because if they rock in and kill the mayor and don't make any big deal about it, don't explain it to anybody, there's definitely going to be ramifications for that.
Oh, and again, sort of on a similar note, if the players are there for something and say like there's a shadow infestation in the town, shadow crawling along, effectively moves as a shadow, can attack out and kill things from beyond. It's an undead creature in D&D, probably Pathfinder as well. And part of that is it actually the person who creates will write it as a shadow as part of that, so it can snowball. But if like a shadow does that to somebody who's in a room with the party or something, even if the party kills the shadow, it's not like it's got like remains.
Yeah, how do you prove it?
Yeah, how do you prove that there was this thing here? I mean, the wounds on it just look like cuts to an untrained peasant. Why
the hell did you tear the shit out of that guy?
Like, it's just like, it's a couple of slash marks across the throat or something. Or, like it looks like they've been choked out by a particular creature. Then, of course, the town, village, whatever's probably going to think the PCs killed that guy. Until like people start just randomly dropping dead elsewhere in the city when they know that the PCs weren't there.
That's right. Just gives the characters, the NPCs, a bit of life. Like the NPCs need to feel real. They don't feel so real if they know everything, or if they just assume that the PCs are always good, so the NPCs always think they're good. It just feels better if the NPCs maybe don't trust you right away. Maybe they've heard about the bad thing that happened in the last town, but they don't quite understand it, and they know you were part of it, so they mistrust it.
They're a little bit standoffish, sure.
Yeah, it just feels a bit more like a real world that you're interacting with. It sort of sets the tone of the campaign a little bit as well. Something else I've got in here is talking about like voices and accents, or I don't do voices or accents, but I know that I have played a table where people have done it and it's been really effective, and it's sort of made that character very memorable. Yeah. But I always use the descriptive method. So obviously voices and accents makes everyone knows.
It sticks in people's mind a little bit more.